Okay. Hello and welcome to the June 17, 2025 meeting of the Litchfield Planning Board. I will be serving in place of Michael Croto since I'm Vice Chair. Let's stand up and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so roll call of members present. Jared O'Connell, Vice Chair.
Travis Tucker, member.
Steve Gannon, Selectman's Rep.
Jesse No, alternate.
Letha Riley, member.
Russell Blanchett, member.
Okay, we are missing Michael Croto and Jeremy. Appointment of alternates. Jesse, would you like to serve in place of Jeremy tonight?
Yes.
Okay, you can vote. So first we have public input on non-agenda items. Does anyone have any thing that's not on the agenda that they'd like to speak about? Okay, seeing none, we can move to the first item on our agenda, which is a conditional use permit for a detached accessory dwelling unit at 40 Natticook Ave, tax map 18, lot 7, owner Brian and Ashley Iwanski. Is the applicant present? Hello? Would you like to introduce yourself to the board?
Nick Couture, I'm a contractor.
Okay. So will you be speaking for the applicant?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So the process for the conditional use permit is to follow the requirements set in our regulation. I'll bring that up. In the meantime, would you like to speak about the application?
Sure. So this one's going to be a detached ADU. It's going to be built above a garage, so it's going to be on the right-hand side of the house. That sits just behind the house. It's for a square footage, meets the square footage requirements, looks like a garage. You know, if you're driving down the street, you never know it was an ADU. It just looks like, just a fancier garage. So I think it meets all the requirements. Met with the building inspector to make sure he also thought it met the requirements as well. So I think this one's pretty straightforward.
Okay. So, does this need to be accepted? Or?
Typically we do.
Okay. Are all the requirements met?
Yes, fees have been paid. And there's no better notification for these.
The plan does appear to meet all our requirements.
Okay. So I guess we can vote to accept the application. So would someone like to make a motion to accept the?
Make a motion, Mr. Chair, Mr. Acting Chair, that we, I move that the application is complete for a detached ADU at 40 Natticook Avenue, tax map 18, lot 7, owners Brian and Ashley Iwanicki.
Okay. So we have a motion to accept the application. Does someone would someone like to second that?
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. So all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed and abstained. So that would be motion passes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 0, 0. Okay, so the next step is we should go through the requirements for a detached ADU. So that's in the zoning ordinance. Okay, so the conditional use permit, section 507.06, pursuant to the authority, conditional use permit for detached accessory dwelling units. So, the following criteria must be satisfied for the planning board to grant a conditional use permit for a detached ADU. A, the detached ADU shall be located only on the side or rear of the property. Yes is. B, a detached ADU shall not contain more than 2 bedrooms. So, is that the case?
Yes. Yep. It does not.
I believe it's just 1 bedroom.
1. Yep.
Yeah, looking at it. Parking and driveway access shall be provided in a manner that maintains the single-family appearance of the property. You already addressed that.
Yep.
No additional curb cuts shall be provided, sharing the same driveway, right?
Correct. Yep.
The detached ADU shall be developed within an existing garage, barn, or other similar outbuilding, or shall be designed to be consistent with the character and appearance of accessory buildings customary for single-family dwellings, such as a garage, barn, or other outbuilding. So is this a new garage?
It's a new garage. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So that looks like that fits that requirement. F, the detached ADU shall be located on the same lot as the primary dwelling, and said lot shall not be subdivided in a manner that results in separation of the detached ADU from the primary dwelling unit. So yeah, it's on the same lot.
Yep.
G, the detached ADU primary dwelling or lot shall not be converted to a condominium or other form of legal ownership distinct from the ownership of the primary dwelling. To ensure compliance with this requirement, the property owners at the time the ADU is established shall be required to execute a restrictive covenant running in favor of the town, which shall be recorded in the Hillsborough County Registry of Deeds, and a copy provided to the building inspector prior to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy. So I'm sure the inspector can help with that.
Yeah, I'll work with the building inspector on that part.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Does the board have any questions before we move on to public input?
Could we have him tell us what exactly I see on here that you have, was confused a little bit about the fact that it's on an existing foundation?
It shouldn't be. It will be completely new. Nothing sits
The
there right
existing
now.
is the current home.
Okay.
Oh, on that.
So when I just pulled that page one,
Yeah, I apologize. I thought I handed in the updated one. It should have shown in red, but you can see like up and to the right a little bit.
yeah,
Just just below the leach field is where it's going to sit. So the propane tank that's right on the
yeah, on the lot line.
on the lot line is going to be
Setback.
moved
Setback.
on the setback line. Yep.
Is this using existing leach field, or will there be a new leach field?
Right now it's going to be using the existing, but we already have a updated plan on file at the state. So that was just recently done. So in the future, if the system fails, we've already have one that's larger that will fit on the property with that being already built.
Okay.
My apologies, my computer is bringing AI into your documents and it's reading stuff that clearly isn't here, so I apologize.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah, have to fix that.
Okay. Any other comments from the board?
I would just say that the design looks really nice.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
know? It's very attractive and seems to match the accompanying home. Yeah, looks nice.
Yeah, the existing house will get a facelift at the same time, so some new windows, new siding, everything will blend together nice. So again, when you're driving by, after it's all complete, you would never know.
Yeah,
So
great.
Yeah, looks good. Okay, so any other comments, questions or comments? Okay, so at this time, I will open this agenda item up to public comment. I think everyone I see here is here for other agenda items. So I will close public comment at on this item at 7:12 p.m. Okay, any,
I have one other question, if I may. What do the neighbors think? Have your applicants or your owners, have they talked to any of the neighbors, or?
I'm not personally sure if they talk to the neighbors or not.
Okay.
I know
Just
we're,
always like to know
I know one of the
if they're
neighbors is
okay.
happy because we just completed another job in the neighborhood and we referred by them, so
Okay.
I assume they would be happy as well. But as to everybody else, I'm not sure.
All right, just curious, thanks.
yeah, and thanks for providing the renders. I think it definitely really shows how it fits the character of the area. Yeah, because we don't always know what these are going to look like when they're actually constructed.
Yeah, we like when it blends in and doesn't stick out like sore thumb, so.
Okay.
Looks good.
I think, is that all? If so, would, we already had no questions regarding the requirements set forth in the zoning ordinances. So I guess the next step is if someone would like to make a motion to grant a conditional use permit for the detached ADU.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion for, to permit a conditional use for a detached accessory dwelling unit at 40 Natticook Avenue, tax map 18 lot 7.
I'll second that.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, so all those in favor of the motion to grant the conditional use permit, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstained? Okay, motion passes 6-0-0. Congratulations.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So next on our agenda is a conceptual discussion for tax map 22, lots 4, 96, and 99 in the Northern Commercial Mixed-Use Village Development. Applicant Reginald Moreau. Applicant present.
Members of the board, I'm Reggie Moreau, and I'm here to present that conceptual. I know that the Northern Village District is currently undergoing some revisions as it relates to the regulations that are going to be implied. So this is about 2 weeks old, so there might have been some additional things that might have been added that may, create some revisions or something along those lines, but we tried to interpret as best we could, what the board was trying to do, and then, of course, being here at some of the prior discussions early on about that Northern Village District, put a lot of that into it as well. I think you might already have a digital copy, but I have some additional copies here if it's easier for you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Let's see.
Thank you.
Oh, it's all right. I'll use
Between the two? Oh, Jim's already got one, so look at that.
Do you need one for yourself? Oh, we got one.
Got one, thank you. You got lucky. All right, so this one's a little bit different than the one you've already been, I know Rick Charbonneau's been in front of you a couple of times. I've had the opportunity to review those meetings. And so it's different, and I know those discussions have been brought up in the form that Rick has got frontage on 3A that lends itself better to commercial use than what we had. So that was the biggest challenge with this particular parcel. And then trying to determine the uses that would be more adequate for that location. So there are two locations. If you look at it when you first come in on St. Francis Way, the commercial aspect of it exists on that portion, which is the entrance into that area. And there's one on the right and there's one on the left. So we are envisioning, and I know that in Rick's meeting, he was looking at the potential for a daycare. We are also seeking that same type of user in this location. I've spoken to a couple. I happen to know a few people that run some daycares to see if they'd have any interest. And at this point, they need more information. like anything in town, the biggest drawback from commercial use in the town is the number of rooftops that we have, okay? My background started out in commercial real estate. I got my CCIM designation. I spent a lot of time with a large pension fund, acquiring properties and renovating and doing those kinds of things up and down the East Coast. I spent a lot of time in Vegas at the ICSC for commercial shopping centers, worked with tenants such as, TJ Maxx, CVS, Hannaford's, pretty much I did the Target and Lowe's in Bedford. That's one of mine, the CVS and Bedford, up in Concord, if you're familiar with the old Bear Right building, I repositioned that along, my old company did, and then we also put the Burger King from inside to outside. So done a lot of commercial development early on in my career, and then I found that residential was more of the spot I enjoyed the most. So I kind of made the change, but not much has changed. The users are still looking for, the sweet corner. There's certain things that they want. Parking has changed in some instances over the years, but a lot of things have kind of remained the same. So the biggest thing is the rooftops. They really want to see the rooftops, and then second of all, if they can't get the rooftops, they want to see the amount of traffic and the positioning as to how they're related to that traffic flow. So in this particular location, unfortunately, we can't worry about the traffic. We're not going to get the visibility. We don't own any property out onto 3A, so there's no signage possibilities at least at this point in time. So people are going to have to know about it through other methods, and the other methods are there's going to be traffic that's going to travel down to the school. There's going to be traffic that travels down to the church, and that's going to be our primary flow of visibility. In time, it'll get out there, and more people in the community will know about it, but people outside of the community probably won't, okay, because we just don't have that ability. So a daycare works well because, you're currently going down there to drop off children at school, and it's kind of on the way, and there's some great opportunities to capture and utilize that location. So that's our primary focus on that particular location. It also would work well for other things that would be smaller uses, different types of things. Spas are tough because they require a little bit more as it relates to a septic system. So you have to be somewhat careful as to how you introduce something like that. You have to have a little more space, a little more area for that system to be able to be capable of handling what the use is there. So that's something that we're kind of, not really looking at, but again, either across the way where Rick is at or where we're at, it's a potential possibility, but not one that I'm really looking at seriously at this point. And then the other side of the street, I'm looking at office potential. I'm actually looking for a location to move my office out of Manchester to. I have a real estate office and a construction, not a construction yard or anything like that, but a construction office. If you're familiar with Bedford, I had one there for many, many years. I had a 5,000 square foot office. It housed my site work business in the upper level, and it housed my housing business on the lower level, which had a big showroom that I could bring people in to look at all the products, sit down, and go through from soup to nuts on picking everything that they want for their home. It was a one-stop shop, and I sold that building a few years back. Somebody wanted it more than I did, and so I had to give up with that, and I'm looking for a new location. So this would probably work well for us for that purpose, because we do a lot in town, and I still live here, and I'm looking for short trips to the office these days. So it'd be a nice spot for us. I'd love to keep the business here in Litchfield. So that's the other location that we're looking at, and there's a good possibility to be another user there with the square footage that we have there. And not too sure who that would be, but there are a lot of ancillary businesses that would work well with us that I've worked with in the past. So those are the two commercial uses that we're looking at, and the location that we're looking at is right there off of St. Francis. The neighborhood itself, and looking at the neighborhood, we took a strong look at it. Things are working very well over at the farm right now. The lease up of what we have on Dutch for the remaining 16 units We've only been releasing them building at a time, and they've been filling. We're looking at the potential of doing more of those units. They're nice units. People really like them. So we're looking at two different types of unit. That would be one. That would be the ones on the upper portion of the site that you see. Why are we using the upper portion of the site? That's got the best soils, and that's where we're going to need the best leach fields. Okay, so we're utilizing that upper part of the slope to accommodate the soils. The next area down below that, and if you look, you can see the dash lines, the green dash lines, which actually will, tell you that's the cluster that we're looking at for the 3-bedroom type housing that we have over at the farm. And there's 40 units in there, okay? The other that we're looking at is we've been asked to look at something that would accommodate, age-restricted units. And so we took a look at the age-restricted units. Of course, those are smaller units. They don't have 3 bedrooms. The demand for septic is far less than what it is for the other ones. So we looked and we said, okay, how does that work? And it's a great location for that. So if you look, you can see the encircled area there, which has 44 of the age-restricted units that we're proposing in that location. There is going to be interconnectivity. You can see in orange the sidewalks that kind of carry throughout the neighborhood. There are 2 entrances today to the property. The one at St. Francis Way, that works well because if you look now, there is already a stacking lane that exists there for both directions, turning into St. Francis Way. So you have that ability to, capture the use of that without having to really improve based upon the traffic count that we looked at. We don't have to improve anything on 3A in that location. The other location is a little more challenging, and the reason why it's challenging is because you have a curve and a hill, okay? So to try to put traffic out in that location in 2 directions, I don't think would work ideally. I don't think we have the sight distance to meet this, the requirements for the speed that's there. So we're looking at probably just a one-way out, and that would be a one-way going right, okay? The other alternative would be to just keep that as an emergency entrance, okay, for fire and, fire purposes or whatever. So those are things that they're available one way or the other. It would work, like I said, as a right turn lane out. You could actually do a turn lane in, right turn in as well, in that location. But I certainly wouldn't want to see traffic coming out in 2 directions in that location, and not without improvements to the sight distances on 3A. And I don't think you can get it there with the housing that exists there today. So I wouldn't be proposing anything in that location other than, like I said, a right turn out and a right turn in, or having that as an emergency. I brought this in front of the Conservation Commission, again, informally, not with any, intent other than what do you think, and give me some guidance if you have some concerns, those kinds of things. And I think they're still absorbing it, but we really didn't have any, there weren't any major concerns that came out at that point. The only thing that was brought up is that there was a location that is up where there's a small area in the first grouping that has poorly drained soils, not very poorly drained soils, and we've taken that into consideration when we designed this, okay? And again, it's a small area that's there, so we did take that into consideration. So that was brought up, and we did discuss that, and that was my response to their question on that. The area that you see, the green space, the large green space that you see out back, there's an area there that, again, is somewhat, it's wet. For the most part, there are some areas that kind of finger in that are dry, but it's just a nice large area to just keep and not get into and just leave as green space. It ties in well also with the green space that the Conservation Commission is already managing with Morris Falls and behind the church. That path could continue. There's already, it's the old trolleyway that they have right now, and that we're looking at, again, utilizing with the Morris Falls, and kind of bringing those trails back in through here, so that if people want to come in and access it through St. Francis Way, that would be something they'd be able to do. The loop that you see on St. Francis Way, there's a right-of-way that exists there, but not an improvement like you see there. It's just a hammerhead. So we'd be looking to improve that into the circle that you see there to allow traffic to go in and out. And again, if we needed to, if people wanted to utilize that location to be a step-off point to go and do some hiking, there might be some room there that we can get some parking in as well. We haven't really looked into that yet, but it would be a likely spot for that. So those are the big things as it relates to the overall plan. The road that does go down to that finger that you see down below with the units down along the river, that finger would have a wetlands crossing. There would be a wetlands crossing needed there, okay? So that would impact the wetlands. Everything else up above that would not have any impact on any wetlands. So I know with that said, I've said a lot, and I know that we've got a lot going on here with regards to the regs, but we're trying to meet the intent, of the regulations, and we're here to kind of get the board's input and concerns and questions or praises, whatever we can get, would be helpful.
Okay, thanks for the presentation. Does anyone on the board have any questions or comments?
I have one comment, and I know we're really pushing for sidewalks, and this is kind of tough because really the only section that can have a sidewalk that'll bring you to Charles Bancroft won't bring you to another sidewalk, so it'll be a dead end. But I know we're trying to encourage, pedestrian walking and movement about, but I don't know if that's something that we could really, you could put a sidewalk, but the concern would be, what would you do with that sidewalk once you get to the end? Last thing we want to do is see people crossing, Albuquerque on a dangerous curve. Charles Bancroft.
You can see that our attempt on that particular issue was to do a roadside sidewalk versus something that, like the one on Albuquerque. So all the orange that you see is all the interconnectivity for pedestrian traffic internally. So it's more of a traditional sidewalk. It sits along the edge of the right-of-way, and then kind of travels all the way out as far as we can carry it on our property. I would hope at some point that would, and depending on how Rick does his stuff across the way, that there might be an opportunity to, find a way to make that interconnect. The big thing is what I'm of the understanding of, is apparently you do have a pedestrian crossing, because, of course, 3A is a pretty dangerous road, especially there when you start widening it out for turn lanes and stuff like that. That's a long distance to get across a way, and so it takes time to do that, and that means that there's time for things to happen, unfortunately. But I was very pleased and surprised that you were able to obtain the lit pedestrian crossing on 3A, which is good for many reasons. Mm-hmm. It will be calming for this area, because once people become familiar that crossing's there, they will slow down, knowing that could be something that could stop them from continuing through. So that's a very nice thing. I live in a town, and I have a home in a town in Florida where they have a lot of those lit pedestrian crossings, and they're an absolute godsend, because it keeps the traffic really slow in that area. So and it's very helpful, and the people use them all the time. It really is very, very nice to see. The hard part is up here in the Northeast, because of the snow and the ice and everything else. They unfortunately break down and require a little more maintenance and a little more attention. But you've been able to get it, and that is just huge. So.
Yeah, and I think Rick Charbonneau might be planning on extending the sidewalk near 3A.
On the east side.
Yeah, it'll be on the east side, but it's gonna go all the way to Albuquerque. The crossing will just be a little bit further, to the north.
Yeah.
I wonder, with the mixed-use development, if there will be any sidewalks on the within the new development.
Yes.
Yes, there was, yeah.
Would there be one extension along Albuquerque though? I know he's gonna cross over here.
Well, there's already the sidewalk On Albuquerque, the multi-use path goes all the way up to 3A.
Yeah, but I think we're, like, the ability to connect this spur down to Albuquerque, would there be sidewalks over there? I don't believe so.
Yeah.
Like, right above where it says Albuquerque Ave.
Yeah, because there was the traffic study that I think was discussed in the Board of Selectmen meeting that the majority of the traffic, like more traffic is turning left on Albuquerque than it is on the more south,
Right.
than it is on 3A south of that intersection. So like if a pedestrian, like let's say wanted to get to the proposed development that Rick is proposing, then that way, that access that you talked about earlier would be a good way for a pedestrian to get to his commercial uses or to Albuquerque's multi-use
But
path.
the concern is they're crossing Charles Bancroft on a corner, on a blind corner at a high rate, and the crosswalk that would be going in is up by the gas station, which is quite a
Yeah.
bit further.
Yeah,
along.
no pedestrian's gonna walk that far,
No.
just to get to Albuquerque. That would be walking like 3 times further.
Yeah,
Since the pedestrian crossing's in, I would, again, I'm not familiar, I didn't look at what was permitted. Was there a reduction in speed for a section of 3A?
Yeah.
No, so they still kept it at 45, even with the
40,
crossing?
40.
40? Okay. You
It's
know,
still worth looking at what the options might be, because it is true that you've got a much lower traffic volume south of the Albuquerque intersection, so maybe something's possible.
Yeah, if there could be a request for a speed reduction in that area, just, it's almost like a school zone, for lack of a better term, right? And once you get past that section, then you're back to square
just
one
looking at a
again.
way where we could tie that in with the rest, take advantage of it.
Yeah, because I think that's, really, I think eventually, the places that people are gonna try to get to are Rick's, and then even potentially down, to try to get down towards Mel's, because, Mel's is one of those places where all the kids wanna go. And, eventually you might try to, see something find its way down that way, but if people are gonna get there, they're gonna get there from Albuquerque.
Right.
If they're gonna do it from a pedestrian standpoint, so trying to, if we can get some sort of reduction in that area would be ideal.
Yeah, because I'm assuming to put in a crosswalk, we would probably need a reduction in order for the visibility lines. And then this is a state-run road,
Yes.
which would make that a long process.
It is, it's a very difficult process, but I think it might be one worth pursuing.
Yeah, and especially
Long
with,
term.
and especially if we could extend that 30, like the 35 or 30 zone to Mel's, because especially with Spooky World, there's a lot of pedestrian traffic
Right.
on that road.
Yeah.
During
And
that
it's
time.
not just a small season, with them too. They've expanded it through Christmas now with the Christmas lights, and I can see that only, growing. So I think it's important that if there's some way that we can calm that traffic in that area for that distance, I think it would be ideal for the town, and much safer.
These can have lower level garages like you do at Corning Farm.
Identical, yeah. The 55 and older, or the age-restricted units would be a little bit different, because they're one bedroom with a potential loft in some of them, because, people aren't gonna have their families with them. But yeah, it'd be a mixture of both.
So those would look like some of the 55 pluses that are out there now, where
I would, again,
possible garage with a first floor living area.
I like the challenge of trying to make something fit in, like we did with, the farm. And I thought that worked very well, and I would come up with, something in concept that would work well with that.
Yep.
Not necessarily the same, because you don't want all the same, but something that would complement. Yeah.
Yeah, on your render, is it just copy and paste the 3-bedroom units that you have? Just
Yes,
visibly?
those are identical. These are the identical footprints that you see here as the ones you have over at Corning Farm.
Would you expect the footprints to be similar on the age-restricted units?
They're a little bit bigger because they're more on one level. Yeah. But they can go bigger because our septic requirements are smaller. So it's kind of a swap,
Yeah.
But I can't tell you how many people come in and wish that they had one floor living. You don't have any with a bedroom on the first floor? Not this time.
Are the age restricted, are they 4 to a building as well?
Yeah, those are 4 units. Yeah, thanks, John.
Have you looked into getting like signage the same way that St. Francis did on the intersection of St. Francis Way and Charles Bancroft Highway?
Not at this point. You know, we haven't really looked at any, we haven't even had any discussions with any of the butters yet. We kind of figured we'd start with this. I like to have something to present, but I don't want it to be just pie in the sky. I like to come in with something that I can say, this is what we're, you know, potentially looking at doing. And I usually sit down with all the abutters. If I can, I bring them into a meeting just to let them know what's going on. And then get their feedback as well. It's important. So, but we haven't done that yet. I just want to have something a little more concrete that I can present to them.
And have you looked into what you would expect from the physical impact study with the 3 bedrooms and the age restricted with the 2 commercial uses?
I have not. We haven't done any impact study as well yet.
Okay. Because yeah, that's one of the requirements to make this happen.
We've done them in the past, and we can, you know, certainly get those, but we have to know what we're, you know, what we're doing so we can show you what the impact would be.
I'm curious in the back, where the age restricted is, the buffering between, is it pretty flat between, that roadway and those back buildings and that industrial building? Cause it's pretty close.
So what you have is you have 3 terraces on this site. You have the upper terrace that's right behind the existing homes.
Okay,
Then it drops down about another 8 feet.
yeah,
And then you have the field terrace, which kind of gently slopes. Then it drops again. And then you have the back field, which is flat.
okay.
And so that elevation, and I'm trying to picture it when I was back there, if it's the same elevation or slightly higher. I think they might have actually removed some material when they did that and kind of balanced the site. So I think we might be up just a little bit higher.
Okay.
And the separation between the properties is actually a stream that kind of comes down behind the tube. I don't even know what is in that facility, but there's a between the other property that fronts on Route 3A and our property, there's actually a depression in there, and that's where you actually have flowage that comes down from, I believe, 3A, and it might even come over from across the street. So in this particular area here, where the yellow dashed line is here, is actually, you know, you can see it's hashed as wet. So there's actually a defined channel that comes down along here. It travels in and then kind of comes across and comes along here and goes out. And then there's also another channel that we talked to the Conservation Commission about. There's another channel that comes out of here, and it kind of takes all of this kind of feeds into here. And then it kind of, this area here that you see there's a huge valley that goes down in there where all of that dumps out. And up here where the old trolleyway is, there was a culvert pipe that is now sitting down in that valley. And it's in dire need of some work in order to get that, you know, so that it's gonna be passable and usable. And so our plans are that we will be back here doing some work to improve that, because right now that it needs to be stabilized. It's just from natural runoff, you know, as things do. But we're gonna wanna get in there to try to stabilize that. And there's also a junkyard somebody's been utilizing and dumping in here for over the years. And so we gotta clean that up as well.
And then the green spot along the river, that's conservation land, right?
So our plans are not to do anything with this.
Right, and then right below where you
All
put,
of
all
this-
that's conservation. Yep.
And Joan can answer that question better than I can, but I believe so.
That's part of Morris Falls.
Most falls, okay.
But I'm concerned about like the folks who live, I mean, you know, there are older folks in the back and we don't want them staring at a industrial building. Are there trees there? I mean,
It's pretty barren. They pretty much cleared right to the back of the property line.
okay.
And ours being field, because they've been farming it, there's really not much there, but we can address that with
Yeah, I
greenscape.
was gonna say I would look forward on your plans to see what you plan to do there, because obviously you'd wanna make it marketable.
Yes, absolutely.
To those folks, and, you know,
Yeah.
I don't wanna,
No,
older folks in the back and, you know, over there, and it's
totally,
terrible.
totally
I wanna
agree.
Make sure they're
Totally
happy.
agree, yeah. No, we'll definitely be looking at greenscape in that area.
Okay.
Have you considered any additional commercial uses beyond your facility and a daycare?
I have not yet. You know, one of the things I will do is once I know that this is something that's more realistic, I will go out and start seeking tenants. I mean, it's something I used to do very well at years ago, so I would go out and do the same.
Okay. Okay, does the board have any other questions or comments?
Thank you
Yeah.
for providing us with
Yeah.
the
Very helpful.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
illustration, yeah.
Yeah. And I guess you can probably stay for, if you'd like, for the next agenda item, which addresses the regulations that are being proposed for these types of developments.
I definitely will be staying.
Guidelines, not
Yeah,
regulations.
which
Guidelines.
are, it's not an ordinance, but it is a
Yeah.
regulation.
And, you know, kudos to the board and the town for voting something like this in. It is a challenge, unfortunately, because we don't have the population base. But we, you know, it has to be created at some time. And it's being created now, which is nice. So over time, this will benefit any other commercial growth that the town wants to see. These rooftops are important, and having that density. I don't know if you're familiar with Fisherville Road in Concord, but Fisherville Road's the northern part of Concord. It goes out past the prison, travels up, it's 3A again, travels up all the way through. And there's a lot of, you know, there's a reasonable amount of density up there. And early on, I did a lot of developing up there, off of and back. And the town kept telling me, you need to come in with commercial, you need to come in with commercial. And we fought and fought to try to get a grocery store up in that part of the town because there was none. And it took us many, many years, and we finally had, it was going to be Associated Grocers was going to open up a store up there. And unfortunately, they decided to expand their warehouse facility at the same time. We were at the point where we thought we were going to get them to land on a location up there, because there's a lot of apartments, there's a lot of condominiums. But everybody, all the large users turned us down. The Demoulas's, the Hannafords, their comments were, every time we brought it to them, there's not enough rooftops, not enough rooftops, not enough rooftops. And in the end, what ended up happening is Demoulas did go up into the area, but they actually went off of exit 17. And that is actually doing very, very well, but they felt that being closer to the interchange on 93 was more beneficial to them than being there, because they could put more users and get the draw, a heavier draw, although they're a very heavy draw for that area. They could get a heavier draw, and now you're seeing other users in there that are really doing well. And it's at that particular location. If you go up, never would have thought that it would have had that much potential, but it's doing extremely well.
Is that the one that you get off and there's a rotary there?
Yes, yeah, they've done a wonderful job in that end of town, and now there's an infill area that's industrial between where the old Concord Monitor was and now that facility. And there's been some developers that have proposed trying to go in with residential, but at this point it's been shut down. They want to see more industrial growth up in that area. But it's doing very, very well. Well, thank you very much for your time, and we'll sit here and listen.
I just
Did you
had
have any comments?
just one question. You know, given the valley that you mentioned in the stream, is it going to be possible for pedestrians to get from the development to that old trolley line and into Moore's Falls?
Yeah, the intention is the sidewalks that we have there all the way down, Jay, that you can see in the orange. They might want to continue out around the circle there, and that could naturally, easily connect up in. There's also, if you look where it says pedestrian network, there's let me point it out here. Right here, where it says pedestrian network, there's great interconnectivity through here as well. So there's some strong possibility of doing more than what you see here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Nice. And what would people who aren't a part of the development be permitted to use those sidewalks? Because that would be private property.
Yes, we would allow for something like that in there for sure. Yeah.
Nice. And are you obviously not committing to anything, but are you thinking most likely rentals for the most part? Or?
So we're looking at the possibility, we've got such a large demand on both, because when we put the first phase out, we sold that out in a weekend. We did have a couple of them drop out because of the AG approval. It took so darn long. People got tired of waiting. It took us almost 5 months. Oh, it took us over 5 months, almost 6 months. So we did lose a couple, but we've now since picked them up. So we only have really one available unit right now in the first phase, and we've got in the second phase, so the first phase is the first 8 units on Mustang 3 and 5. The second phase, we've got half of them sold. I only released 4 of them. So I've got 4 out of the 8 sold, and we'll probably get the next 4 as soon as we release them. So we're seeing very good demand. People want to live in Litchfield. They really do. It's so close to everything, but yet far enough away to feel, safe and comfortable.
So, Reggie, so your AG approval on the second part would be faster because that would be the.
That is our understanding. The first one was rather rough. I was making a lot of phone calls, and they told my attorney to have me stop calling them. But I wasn't gonna, and I think even the governor got tired of getting my emails and phone calls. So, but honestly, it's sad. Believe it or not, there's only one person up at the AG's office that handles these things, and there's a lot of them in the state. And so that's a lot for one person and an assistant. So I totally get it. But when you have people calling you up every day, it makes it hard. So, all right. Thank you very much. Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Without counting those 104 new units.
So that brings us to the third number item on our agenda, continued work session for the supplemental design guidelines for the Northern Commercial Mixed-Use Village District. This area in the Northern Commercial District was created at town meeting March 11, 2025. Also, review section 120.2 off-street parking and loading. So I will hand it over to Jay.
So there's, I have not changed any images at this point, although I will do some image changing and adding. There was only one change that we made as a result of the last meeting, and that's on page 3. By the way, just for ease, you may recall I had changes in, I think, 3 colors the last time you saw it, and I just decided not to add a 4th. So I've accepted all the prior changes. The only change you're going to now see is from the last meeting. So unless I missed something, that was the only change, and it was to address the issue of parking between a non-residential building and the street. So the way it would read previously, it was you can't have more than 1 row of parking between the building and the street. I'm just going to go there on the screen as well. And so that's been changed to say a single row of parking located between the front facade of the building and the street is preferred. So it's no longer required, it just says it's preferred. And then it says parking areas located to the side or rear of the building are encouraged. Whereas previously it said that's your other option. So now it's encouraged and preferred, and that was really the only change. And obviously that was the subject of a lot of discussion.
Yes, it was.
So did you say too that we were gonna wait on parking until they make some decisions up at the state?
I did hand it out anyhow, just to show you what changed since the last time. And this was something we had a fair amount of conversation around. So if you're going to the parking regs, starting on page 1, we had, kind of concern around the term, around churches. And so there's really only a couple of things that we changed. So you can see that we decided to add the term under E, gathering spaces. So now it simply has one category for private clubs, function halls, and gathering spaces. And then on the next page, page 2, I think it was just based on our conversation, we didn't think realistically that we were ever going to see a marina, so we struck marina as a potential use. And so that was it here. It does appear, so when you go all the way down to the bottom of page 3 under multifamily residential development, the suggestion here was that we amend the standards to comply with what is the current maximum of 1.5 parking spaces for any larger multifamily residential development. It does appear that the bill that would reduce it to 1 parking space is going to pass, and will probably, that's as I understand it, it survived the committee of conference, and that portion of it looks like it's going to survive and go on to the governor, so very likely we will have to change the 1.5 to 1. To the best of my knowledge, the rest of it continues to exist. The rest of the changes in, and I'm looking in subsection AS, are all changes that we wanted to make regardless. These were changes to the parking space dimensions and to the requirement that basically said you had to have a 2-car garage. So all those changes would still be true. It's just that we would change that 1.5 parking spaces to 1. And the alternative parking solution language, to the best of my knowledge, has survived. So that's still something we would have to include.
So you feel strongly that we'd have to switch it to what the state says? And I say that because it seems that the state, they're using a catch-all for, basically, it doesn't matter if you're urban, suburban, rural, basically for everybody it's the same, which is ridiculous, right?
In this case, that's true.
And I mean, any developer worth their salt is gonna tell you that there's no way, there's only 1 parking space for, well, I mean, people have cars. It's not like we have, public transportation at the ready around here.
You can't require more, so we would not be allowed to require more. Realistically, in Litchfield, no one is going to propose 1 parking space.
Yeah,
I think of the development that we've been looking at across the street, it's 4. But yeah.
Yeah, we can add encouraged language if we want to say
Yeah, we definitely.
a certain many is encouraged.
It's definitely something to think about, and maybe looking to encourage additional parking for visitors. Might be a way to look at it. No one's going to propose 1 parking space. It's just not going to happen in Litchfield.
Yeah, unless it's, and I can't imagine an apartment building full of studio apartments is going to come to Litchfield.
It will happen in Nashua.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It does. They actually have a maximum parking requirement in Nashua.
What's the maximum parking?
I think it's less than 1,
So you can't have more than 1.
unless you get a waiver. They're going to change that almost certainly, but it'll wind up going to, because they've also allowed no parking on site downtown. If you can show, it's kind of that alternative parking language, if you can show you've got access to public parking, but that's become very strained right now in downtown Nashua. There are areas now that really don't have enough parking, so.
For a place like Nashua, having parking garages
Exactly.
adjacent to developments is preferable.
Yeah, so that most recent development, for those who know it, that went in on School Street, that's their scenario. There is public parking underneath the building. There is less than 1 space for each unit, and the units don't have, to the best of my knowledge, access to those spaces. They're not their
It's nuts.
parking spaces. They can park in the garage.
Oh.
It was a compromise. Yeah.
Well, it's nuts, but that's still Nashua.
That's
where
right.
There's more transportation options, or walkability. I mean, this is Litchfield, like.
Yeah, I mean, truly,
So, yeah.
it's not a standard that makes sense in an urban, in a suburban or rural community. It isn't.
Okay.
Okay, so are there any other changes that we're going to want to do?
That's obviously up to us. There's a lot in here that changed, and we haven't really talked about this one in a while, but most of the changes were an effort to get away from areas that required language related to the number of employees on the largest shift, which was all over the place and is something that's just really, really difficult to objectively measure. And difficult to handle when the use of a building changes and replacing that with a square footage based requirement. So that's really the change that's most consistent. There's still a couple places where you see it because there isn't a good other option, but in almost every case, those went away. And so that's the main one, and there were a few areas. But what I tried to do is, take a sample of communities in the area to see what people are requiring, and there are some areas where our parking requirements were much higher than most other places. So that was the other change that was significant. Anytime it really looked out of whack, we changed it. And also, there's just been changes in the way people, use different facilities. So that mattered as well. And I think that was primarily it. That and just trying to eliminate some that, as we said, a couple of the uses that are just never going to happen. We're never going to have a transportation terminal. Why have a parking zone for it, right? It just takes up space. So those really are the main changes. What I didn't distribute, I don't think, but I will, is a clean copy because this is hard to read. There's so many changes. So I'll send everybody a clean copy so just that you have it. And as soon as we know it comes out of the legislature, we'll know what we have to do, in terms of the parking standard for residential. And then we can move forward, I think, if we wish.
So we'll want to wait until the legislature finalizes stuff before we send this to public hearing.
I would think so, just because we want to know. I think it's going to come down to whether the governor signs it, but that's just one piece we want to know. Obviously, it's an easy change to make, but it's a substantive change. So sending it now and making a substantive change would mean we'd have to have another hearing, so there's kind of no point. For the design guidelines, it's really up to you for the design standards, whether you want to wait on that also, or you want to send it to a public hearing.
Okay.
My opinion on that, I don't know if you want it, but I feel like our chair and Jeremy have significant input that they probably want to, I'd want their blessing. I'd want them here. I don't know if anyone else agrees. I see some heads now.
I would agree with that. I think they've been a pretty large part of the process, and I would hate to lose their input.
So we could add it to the next agenda, and then that way we'll probably be able to get both done at once because we'll know what's going to come out of the legislature at that point.
Yeah. And then, would you feel the same way with the supplemental design guidelines?
Well, that's what I was actually referring to, because I know, I know they've provided, both of them have provided input, but I feel like that if you're gonna send it to public hearing, I think they should have one more opportunity to say yes or no. And it's not like we have such a sense of urgency that we can't wait one more meeting.
That said, the public hearing is an opportunity for them to comment, and if worst case scenario, we can do a second public hearing or a third.
That's a good point.
Because we have two informal proposals for what the regulations would apply to, and it probably doesn't make sense for us to wait longer than necessary because the formal proposals are coming soon.
Well, Jay, you mentioned you were gonna change pictures or something, or were you gonna make?
I don't have to. I'd like to get more images, more pictures included. Those are examples.
Okay.
And we could certainly do
it at a
that.
public hearing then, basically, is that what you're saying? As a result of a public hearing?
Certainly, yes, we could.
Admin?
So it's really what folks want. We're looking at a July 1st meeting, would be our first meeting in July, and our second meeting would be the 15th. So we could do it either way.
July 1st, we'd have to have the notice on Friday.
Right. If we wait to make a decision until the 1st, we would make the 15th, so it's really just a 2-week difference, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're the acting chair, so you.
Yeah. If we know we want to add more images, it probably makes sense to wait until we have those images
Okay.
in there. But if not, then my preference would probably be to send it to public hearing for the next meeting.
And again, that's a choice. We don't have to add more images.
Yeah.
There were some more I thought would be nice to add, but we don't have to.
Yeah.
If you wait till the 15th, then you can find out what happens with the parking and do it all at once. too.
That's true.
Mhm. Cool. So it looks like a good chunk of the board is leaning towards later
Yeah,
public
later.
hearing.
Okay.
I don't have strong feelings one way or the other. I'm respectful of the developers who want to have some finality in the regulations that they'll have to adhere to, but I do also want to get this right.
I guess in the meantime, do we have any comments from members of the public?
No, just that, as was stated earlier, the parking from a residential standpoint really is gonna be dictated by the developer not wanting to go with that fewer parking spots.
Yes.
It's just a nuisance, and people just don't want it. So I don't think you're gonna have, you may have an issue in the regulations that you don't like, but I don't think the practicality behind it is gonna be as terrible as you think it might be. I'd be shocked. I know I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, it'd be hard to rent out a place.
It's extremely
Yeah.
difficult. Well, you can see
Yeah,
we
who
have
would
3
rent it?
over at the farm, and that's based on experience of other locations that we built the same style of unit. And we had additional parking throughout the neighborhood. And at the same point, we had trash containers throughout the neighborhood to make it easier and more convenient. We ended up taking all the trash containers off their pads, consolidating them in one location, so that they had additional parking in those locations,
Yeah.
and it still wasn't enough.
Mhm.
So, there are certain times when it's just, especially in the wintertime when everything gets pinched down, it really becomes more difficult. So we had, no issues with parking over there, and that, it's nice to not get those phone calls. So,
Okay. I guess unless someone would like to make a motion to have the public hearing next meeting, I guess we can just put an agenda item into the next meeting to continue the workshop.
We'll add it to the first.
Hopefully, we can have all final images at that point.
We will.
What images are we looking for?
I think there's just some more examples, I think Lisa, you sent some from Londonderry. I think there's some good examples that we could add. There's a couple more I've seen in Amherst, and they're not critical. I think that I'd like to get, I think it's important to have a good example of a retail building. The examples of the commercial buildings that we had are really office, which is fine, but that's probably the one thing I think I'd really like to see in here, some good retail examples. And, ideally, why not throw in a daycare? We've already had conversation around that on 2 sites, right? So, and I know there's a couple good examples out there, so that would also kind of make sense.
Sounds good. And I guess if any members that are currently present aren't present in the next meeting, would you be comfortable with what we have here being moved to public hearing?
I would be.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll keep that in mind when we're considering that next meeting.
It's a good point.
Yeah, because it is summer.
Yeah.
Into that time.
I guess any other discussion on the supplemental design guidelines or the parking?
Not from my end, but of course, the other thing that we do know is that, this has been a very active legislative session, so we'll definitely have some things to think about on the zoning side, once this legislative session ends.
Any that come to mind, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, just off the top of my head, as we saw this evening, and this is, the ADU changes aren't huge for Litchfield because we already allow attached by right and we allow detached. The big change is just the square footage requirement will go up to 950 square feet will now be the minimum. So that's a change we'll have to make. That's not a huge change, but that is just one we'll have to make.
And that's an ordinance, so we'll have to have that for,
Yes, for town meeting.
yeah.
The other one is, that would affect Litchfield if it passes, and we don't know if it will, because it hasn't, to the best of my knowledge, come out of a committee on conference, and that would be that manufactured housing would have to be allowed anywhere where a single-family home is allowed.
Oh, wow.
So that's a significant change.
That is a very significant change.
Should that survive, it might not, so we'll have to wait and see on that. I was watching there's one that would require that multifamily residential be allowed in commercial zones. And I'd have to double check on that, but the last I saw that bill, it is for commercial zones that have water and sewer. So that would not affect Litchfield. Although again, things can change, so, but at this point, those are really the big ones. The lot size requirement one would not have affected Litchfield, but that didn't survive. And I'm sure there's other ones that'll come along as well.
So the ADU at 950 minimum, not maximum?
We can't require anything less than.
Okay,
Right.
gotcha.
Now the law is 750.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think that will be too consequential, because how well you design the ADU matters more than the raw square footage in terms of how it fits into the neighborhood.
I think that's right, and, I mean, as we saw this evening, we had one that was proposed, and it was proposed for less than, our maximum, so that's gonna happen too. People are gonna propose what makes sense. The times, I think, and it's not been an issue in Litchfield. I think once we had one that got a variance. It was, we had one that did get a variance
Yeah,
because
the
it
one
needed
on
to go
Charles
over.
Bancroft
Right.
Highway, that was gigantic.
That was gigantic, so that does happen. Where it becomes an issue more is for people who are converting basements. And you find yourself in a situation where you don't want to leave like dead space in a basement. What do you do with the rest of the basement? And sometimes that could be a challenge.
Well, it used to be a basement, so it continues
You
to be
can
a
do
basement.
that, right, carve out a piece that stays with, but sometimes that's a challenge. Sometimes the second level of a garage is a challenge if it's a very large garage.
Yeah. And I can also imagine enforceability would be harder, because people can more easily just manually themselves finish the places that they would have had to have just to fit the requirements kept unfinished.
Yeah. But I think in general, Litchfield has been in pretty good shape because we really do allow opportunities for multifamily. We do allow opportunities for manufactured housing in parks. So now with the changes in the northern commercial zone, there really is significant opportunity here. And Litchfield's lot size requirements are not very large for single family. They're only an acre. So for a lot of the stuff that's been talked about, it really wasn't going to have a significant impact on Litchfield.
Yeah, it would be, if we are going to have to revise the ADU requirements, it would probably be interesting to run a survey to see what people want from that, to see if they would want just the state required minimum or if they would want more.
That's certainly a thought. We've seen some communities go larger, depending on the nature of them. There's changes to things like building permits on Class 6 road, but I don't think that impacts Litchfield either. I don't think we have Class 6 roads. So there's a lot of stuff that doesn't affect Litchfield that is going to affect, especially our more rural towns.
Yeah, and one of the reasons that I wonder if people would want just the minimum or if they would want slightly more than the minimum for ADUs is that there are probably plenty of people that are going to age in place and they want probably to build an ADU so they can just move into their ADU while having their kids live in the bigger house. And yeah, some people might want a little more space,
Oh, yeah, we definitely see that.
but we just don't want it to become a full duplex. That's the balance.
And as you may have seen, there's a development that went in Hudson with new homes built, all of them with ADUs. Yeah,
Interesting.
I'd be surprised if we see more of that.
Okay.
It's the cost. They're like 1.2 million.
They are, yeah,
It's expensive.
very expensive,
Very nice, but very expensive.
yes. ADUs are expensive.
Okay, any other discussion items for the workshop? Okay, so I think that is it for the major items on the agenda. So next we have committee reports. So we
I have nothing to report. I was out of town last week.
Okay. Who else is part of any other committees here? Anyone, like Jeremy's out, he's part of the economic development, right?
Conservation will be July 10th instead of the first Thursday. It'll be the second Thursday because of the holiday week.
And National Regional Planning Commission is tomorrow, so it's the annual meeting, so it'll be a adoption of the budget, the due schedule, and there's also, as always, amendments to the Transportation Improvement Program, so there's several there, none that affect Litchfield directly, although they affect you if you drive around roads in the region. Really the big change, most of the changes there are in Nashua, and most of them are delaying projects, in a large part because of match requirements. It's too challenging for the city to come up with a match for as many projects as they have approved. And then the other thing we're seeing is a presentation from the Department of Safety, talking about some of the changes and initiatives they're trying to implement statewide, but the trends are for an increase in serious injuries and fatalities on New Hampshire roads, some of which you just may have seen anecdotally through the news, but we are seeing more really, really severe crashes, a lot of them involving people going across the center line, including pretty wide areas, a lot of vehicles going off the road, and for some reason, a lot of extreme speed.
Yeah, just in the past month, there have been like 4 deaths that I've seen on the news in Litchfield, Londonderry, and the town north of Manchester.
Goffstown or Hooksett.
Hooksett, yeah.
Yeah. Yes,
Which is
on the
crazy.
turnpike.
Just
Yeah.
one after the other.
Yes.
It's very unfortunate.
It really is. It's really awful. So there are definitely some moves. The whole goal has been to reduce, serious injuries and fatalities, and we're going in the other direction. And, not entirely sure why, but they're trying to at least do something. Some of them are infrastructure, like on 95. I think we had 5 fatalities with people going off the road. But they are delaying those improvements. Budget reasons, so those will be in 2026.
What type of improvements are they proposing?
In 95, a barrier.
They were talking about steel cables, running down the middle, so if anybody goes across the center line and basically crosses traffic, it would.
Prevent a head-on collision.
Yeah, it would conceivably stop them, but the cost was way too high.
Yeah. So they're going to go out to bid again, I think, is the plan. So it'll be interesting to hear what they have to say about the trends and what what they're thinking. What can we do to get this reversed, because it's pretty stunning. Especially these people going 110. I mean, the wrong way. It's like
With their seatbelt off.
Of course, of course.
In the middle of the day. Like what? Okay.
It's baffling. So at any rate, we'll have a presentation on that.
Okay. So after that, we have the June 3rd, 2025 minutes. Has everyone here had a chance to review those? I saw one quote that didn't look right. Let me find it. Okay, so in the quote on page 2, from the bottom, let's go to the bottom. 5th from the bottom. Mr. Charbonneau expressed concerns about the parking configuration. Mr. Protopoulos noted that section 190-15.3 reads, not more than a single row of parking may be between the front facade and the street. Additional parking areas must be located on the side of the rear of the building. It should be or the rear. It's not side of the rear. Anyone else have any errors they've noticed? Okay. So would someone like to make a motion to approve the June 3rd, 2025 minutes as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed and abstain?
Aye.
Okay, so we have 402 for that. And back to the agenda. Any other business for this evening?
You may notice in the portal for this meeting, at the very bottom, there's a slide presentation from the June 11th presentation the town administrator gave regarding town policies and procedures and right to know. I attended the workshop for that. It was very informative. The slides give a great deal of information. I encourage everyone to review them.
Any takeaways, major takeaways?
RSA 91A is very important, and we should be aware of the requirements and adhere to them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, trying to be very careful with messaging.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other business?
No,
Okay.
but I'll echo that. I just got a 91A request for another town, and what they're looking for is pretty comprehensive, and in the case of that community, they're going to be scrambling. It's always best not to have to scramble. Because those always come from, well, not always, but there's very often from an attorney, and there's a reason they're asking.
Okay, if there's no other business, then someone may make
I'll
a.
make a motion to adjourn.
Yes. Okay, we have a motion, and
I'll second that.
we have a second from Jesse. Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion to adjourn, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed and abstained, motion passes 600. Okay, thanks for watching the planning board June 17th planning board meeting. Our next meeting will be in July 4th?
July 1st.
July 1st. Yeah, thanks for watching.
Good job.
Really had